So last week we heard the unfortunate story of a 4-year-old boy who was beaten to death. This has helped to reopen the ongoing conversation about the corporal punishment ban. Here with us this morning is Rebecca Tortello, education specialist at UNICEF, to kind of start the discussion with us. Good morning. Welcome to Smile Jamaica. It's morning time. Hope all is well with you.
Good morning to you both. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. I'm a father. My child not doing so wonderfully, so I take out my belt and I slap him a couple of times and send him to his room. That's corporal punishment?
That is. Corporal punishment is any type of punishment that uses force. It's intended to inflict any type of physical pain or injury.
Wow.
And it's something that the UN is very much against, UNICEF specifically and all UN agencies, because it violates the rights of our children to grow up free from fear in safe, loving homes.
So the suggestion is that you should not hit your child at all for whatever reason, no matter how soft, hard, you should not hit your child. That's what we're talking about here.
Yes, because corporal punishment is often meted out in anger or in frustration or in aggravation, so in response to a specific situation. And so what can happen is that punishment can then escalate and cause injury. And nobody wants, most parents don't want to injure their children. We know that parents want alternative methods of discipline, and we culturally believe that corporal punishment is one way to achieve that goal of raising, children who are respectful, thoughtful, kind, who listen, who are obedient, etc. But there are other ways that we can achieve this without teaching children that violence is an answer. What corporal punishment does is it stops the action, but it doesn't necessarily teach the child how to self-regulate or to prevent that action in the future. And a lot of that learning happens through communication and conversation. So we've asked students, we've asked teenagers across the island what they think about discipline and punishment, and we did this through a U-Report poll on our social messaging platform, and they told us 41% of them said that they were against corporal punishment, that they wanted to be talked to have conversations, to communicate. Another 30% said that withdrawing privileges was something that they thought would be useful. Only 17% talked about the use of corporal punishment. So I think we're in a important time. We're in a pivotal moment here in Jamaica, and the conversation is important. And we need more and more voices to come out and speak about this issue, both at home and at school. Right now, our children are not protected at school either, unless they're above the age of 6 under the existing laws, and there's no protection at home to prevent the type of escalation and the type of tragedy that you just referred to in your opening statement with the 4-year-old.
Not only does it not deter the child from perpetuating whatever behavior you're trying to quote-unquote correct, oftentimes it hardens them and has the actual opposite effect and makes them so bitter that they become even, so vengeful and hateful that it encourages other types of undesirable behavior, does it not?
It does, and it can cause something that's called a phenomenon that's known as toxic stress, which is when something keeps happening repeatedly to a child that causes harm, and especially for young children. So we know from the data that we have available from a multiple indicator cluster survey that 1 in 7 children under the age of 15 have experienced some form of violent punishment. 8 in 10 have been hit with some kind of implement, 8 in 10 of those, 70%. And in that group, it's the younger children who are often the ones who are targeted the most. And that's likely because they can't speak for themselves. They're not able to communicate. So their behavior, why they're behaving in a certain way, just like this 4-year-old boy, may not be easily understood. And so how do you figure out what is going on with your child? And it's about, again, that's why I'm stressing the concept of communication, which is harder with younger children. But sometimes one of the most important things we can do as a parent is to step back from the situation and try and calm ourselves down first. Yeah. What is really happening with us? That's a hard thing to do. It's not a simple thing. So it's something that we have to, I think, try harder to do, and we can all do a better job of, even in our daily lives when we have altercations or confrontations with other adults. The same, if we reacted the way we react to our children, we would be charged with assault. battery.
So that's where I'm going, right, Rebecca? Because at the heart of this is culture. At the heart of this is children's rights, right? Because at the end of the day, what we need to understand is that children are people with rights. They're little people, right? But if we think it's not okay to hit other adults, and I'm hoping most of us do, this is just a mini version of a bigger person. So why does this child not deserve the same kind of respect that you would accord an adult? I mean, children between the ages of 2 and 4 are more violently punished. Children in the poorest families are almost 5 times as likely. These stats are staggering.
Yes, and it's as you said, Simone, it's really a cultural issue. We believe in this spare the rod, spoil the child kind of, many of us do. But also we've seen many parents are interested and want to learn alternative ways to discipline their children. And I think it's important for people to reflect on the difference between discipline and punishment. So discipline actually comes from the word disciple, which has an element of teaching and learning as inherent in it. And punishment is a reaction to stop something. There's no learning opportunity necessarily in punishment to go forward, as you said, and it can also have other effects like, dissatisfaction, increasing anger. And what you don't want is to teach children that violence is an answer ever, right? So violence begets more violence. Toxic stress is something that it can take years, if at all, to unravel the effects of that in our children's brains and in our young children. That's when the majority of the connections, the synapses are joining in their brains. So what we know is that parents want help. They want alternatives. There are many alternatives out there. A lot of them begin with communication. A lot of them begin with calming yourself down first as a parent. A lot of them have to do with, even as the child gets older, you can discuss with the child, you did this. You didn't share with your sister. Why didn't you do that? What you think is a fair response to that? Well, maybe you lose this privilege or that privilege for a period of time, and then you show me you have a strategy not to be like that again, and you can earn back that privilege, or you're grounded, or another thing I think that in our culture, at home and at school, it would be helpful if we took more time to praise our children when they're doing something that's good. A lot can be accomplished by positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Final question from me, Rebecca. I've never hit my kids, but I can remember, and I'll use the word that we use, draping up my daughter one time when she was probably about 8 or 9. I kind of pull her up and never hit her, and I never hit any of them. And I ask this question seriously. Is there any room for a parent for aggressive behavior, not violent behavior, but something like a little drape or, is there any room for that at all? Or you're saying, no, don't go there at all?
So I think the context is really important. I mean, if the child is climbing up the grill and you're pulling the child down, that's saving the child from harm. But the problem with this sort of physical activity, Neville, is that your drape and my drape, or another person who's much larger or in anger drapes, could cause harm to a child.
Right.
So, that's where you get into the legislation and the child rights deprivations, and that's part of what makes it such a complex issue. And I think it's going to take time in Jamaica. I think that the seeds are being sown, and the more voices that can join this call to move towards a ban in all situations, at school and at home. Not to criminalize parents, but to give parents other strategies to use in their homes and teach their children that these are strategies they can use when they also become parents. Fantastic. Is the way that we're headed. And I want to say I'm hopeful. I'm sorry that it takes these repeated tragedies to force us to have these conversations about our children's rights to live and grow in free from fear.
Thanks a lot. Stay safe. Good to see you. God bless you.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Education specialist at UNICEF. Just to finish that story.
That was sad.
Yeah, I remember draping my daughter Camila and telling her I would knock off your head. And I just pushed her away. Probably about 11 o'clock at night. She wakes me up, scared the daylight out of me, and her brother is beside her. And I said, what happened? And she said, Daddy, were you going to hit me? And I said, no. And she looked at her brother and said, I told you. I've never hit them. But I was a little annoyed. And I just said, "Well, you know, you must behave yourself, you know." And she, I mean, and I really never had reason to beat any of them, truth be told.
Yeah,
You know?
but the draping too, I mean...
No, I understand. That's what I
Yeah.
said. I understand everything.
Yeah, because you see...
And we learn as parents also.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you're telling the story because we're all human.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes you think it's just a drape.
Yeah, man.
And, I mean, you know, sometimes you get to the point where you're so angry, you just don't know
Yeah,
what
man.
you're going to do.
No.
And so,
I realize...
Rebecca is right. It is very hard,
Yeah.
you know, to say... I would say to Aaron, give Mommy 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just give me some time.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in it. Because it... I mean, you know, having been there,
Yeah.
it makes you so angry
Yep.
and so bitter and
Yep.
so... And kids don't deserve it.
Yeah.
My God, what can a 2-year-old child do
Yeah.
for
That
you
you
to be
beat her so hard.
I mean,
Yeah.
them don't even know.
And after a while, my kids got it. I don't know. It just happened to me. I mean, when I say Camila, she just say, "Uh-oh."
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because I call her honey, darling, Mila.
Yeah.
But when I said Camila, she just said,
What did I
"Uh-oh."
do, Dad?
Soon come. Stay with us. More on Smile after this.